Hey, everybody. Welcome to Takeoff with John Clark, and it is here, the NFC Championship game, Eagles, Commanders, NFC East battle. So let's bring in the best at breaking it all down from Baldy's breakdowns. Brian Baldinger, I appreciate you joining us. I know your time is very valuable. You're breaking down a lot of games right now, so thanks for the time.
Yeah, my pleasure, John. I mean, look, we got to serve these Eagle fans, man. Like, there's no other fan base like them, so let's give it to them. Let's give it to them straight, the good, the bad, whatever it is. But here they are, and I think we probably had one of these podcasts at the end of the year during the collapse, John, and there wasn't a whole lot of great things to talk about that collapse. So they rebounded, they rebuilt this team, and they look stronger than ever to me.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, the roster that Howie Roseman has put together and the coaching by the coordinators. So, Baldy, the thing everybody's asking up here is the Eagles have their formula, their identity of running the ball with Saquon Barkley, playing great defense, and not turning it over. And then they see Jayden Daniels, the way he's throwing the ball, and they're all asking, can the Eagles win and beat the Commanders going with their formula once again?
Well, I mean, they just went against a quarterback that could throw the ball as well as anybody. Matt Stafford, he had trouble. Got the ball out of his hands once, and, Jayden got the ball out of the running back's hands, and that was a big difference in the game. They threw the ball pretty well, albeit, conditions that aren't great for it. But Jayden is special. I mean, what he did in Detroit is real, and it's not just Jayden, John. I've been around Cliff Kingsbury a long time. I did a lot of Big 12 games over the years when he was with Mahomes. Probably did Patrick Mahomes' first start at Texas Tech. And I remember going in and talking to Cliff on Fridays, and he'd be on the phone or something in his office. And I would just look at his whiteboard, and I would just look at plays, formations, ideas, concepts. And I'm telling you, it never really stops. And so they have their hands full. I mean, as good as they've been, and I hope Quinyon's back, but regardless of what happens, I mean, they're pretty healthy. They're going to have their hands full. This is a really talented quarterback and a talented system. And they might shut down the run. They might do a lot of things, but, they're going to be a 4-down team, John. They're going to go for it on 4th downs. They're 23 or 27 on 4th downs. The first game, week 11, in Philly, they had a 4th and 2 with a chance to go take the lead and go score a touchdown, and Zach Bond blew it all up. And so, obviously they beat him in the, week 16. We know what happened to Jayden in the game. But regardless, this is a special player. And it doesn't look like any of these games are too big for him right now.
So as we're seeing in the playoffs, I think I saw the stat that Jayden Daniels is the first rookie quarterback ever with back-to-back 300-plus total yard games in the playoffs. Have they morphed into a passing team in Washington with how well he's thrown it? I mean, I think he's averaging like 33, 34 pass attempts over these last 6-7 games.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has gotten healthier since he was hurt, back in week 9 or 10 against Carolina. But regardless, Diami Brown has certainly come, he never had anything like the last 2 games he's had in the playoffs. And so he's become a real number 2 for them. And they were looking for that guy for a long time. And obviously McLaurin has always been an Eagle killer, but he's been unbelievable this year. And to go with Zach Ertz. So they've got their 3 targets. And then Austin Eckler out of the backfield he's a dangerous guy. So I think they've got enough targets. They ran the ball a lot better last week than they have been running it. Brian Robinson had some good runs. He looked like a bruising type back. And so I think they'll Cliff has always spread you out to run it. And Jayden is such a big part of his running game. He doesn't slide. He goes everything head first or out of bounds. And so it's just something you got to study. Like, I can't find him sliding, in the open field. Like, it's a little bit like Mike Vick like that. Like, he just doesn't really know how to do it, or he just chooses not to, one or the other. But you got to account for him as a runner in every situation.
If you're the Eagles and Vic Fangio, because of some of those big runs that he was able to get against the Lions and getting first downs, would you consider spying him?
Well, the spy thing, John, it depends on who's spying. First of all, if you're not faster than Jayden Daniels, it's not really a good bet, because he's just going to outrun you. And nobody catches him from behind. He's as fast as he needs to be. And he's, I've seen Todd Bowles spy him in 2 different games. That wasn't really all that effective. But I would have my eyes on him. I'd probably play a lot of zone. So I had all eyes on him when he does break the pocket. And, I got a bunch of, whether it's Zach or, whoever's playing linebacker at the time, whoever, Cooper or whatever's down there, like I have my eyes on him and just make sure that if he breaks the pocket, we got guys flattening him and not letting him get north-south, flattening him to the sideline.
We saw Jayden Daniels throw 5 touchdown passes against the Birds in Washington. I believe you were there. Had a nice coat that you had to run and get, right?
Yes, that's true. Yes, it was a little chilly that day.
It was a really cold day in Washington. So we saw him have success. Now, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was kicked out of the game. So I think everybody's wondering, if Jayden Daniels has success against the Eagles defense, can the Eagles offense win a shootout? We really haven't seen that yet. We've seen Saquon control the game with the offensive line. Do you think Jaylen can win a shootout against Jayden Daniels?
I think he can. I mean, he threw 2 deep balls the other day, one in Devontae Smith, the middle of the field's a perfect throw. And, Kelly Witherspoon took his head off and he flagged it and he dropped the ball and he threw a dime to A.J. Brown at the pylon. A.J. probably catches that ball 98 out of 100 times. We saw 2 deep shots and it was really good. A big part of the formula, obviously, John, if you take that second Washington game out where he got concussed, he's 12-0. He's 12-0 as a starter in games he starts and finishes, including, these 2 playoff games, and he hasn't thrown an interception, 1 interception in these 12 games. And so, 16 touchdowns, 1 interception, that's not answering your question. Your question is, can he win in a shootout? I think I would never say that Jaylen can't do that. I don't know. I mean, you're probably out there at practice today, John. I don't know what his mobility is going to be like after the knee injury. I don't think any of us know what it's going to look like on Sunday. We know he's going to go. We know how tough he is. He's played through all these injuries before, but these injuries have impacted him in past years. Shoulder injury impacted him. Ankle injury impacted him. He's been impacted by these injuries that he has suffered late in the season in these weeks. So we got to see just how mobile he is and if he can extend plays, but it would be good if he, probably got the ball out on time a little bit more frequently than he has been doing over the last few weeks.
And you made a good point. So in that Washington game, even though Saquon still ran for about 150 yards, when Jaylen left the game, the Washington Commanders are really able to slow down Saquon maybe 2-3 yards a carry. And that's because the threat of Jaylen running the ball was not there anymore. Do you think that Jaylen, if his knee is an issue, do you think at the beginning of the game he should just run it just to show Washington he's willing to do that so that they can't crash on Saquon and try to stop Saquon?
Well, it's interesting, John. So I went back and I researched Saquon against the Commanders in 2 games. He's got 55 runs for 296 yards, almost 300 yards, over 5 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns. He's got touchdown runs of 23, 39, and 68 yards. So literally 12 runs have netted Saquon 224 yards. 43 other runs, including the first game where Jaylen was in there, has netted 87 yards. And really, it wasn't that dissimilar against the Rams. He's a home run hitter. You have to keep feeding him. You don't know when the dam is going to break. And so whether Jaylen runs or doesn't run early, I just think that you're going to get a lot of runs that are 0, 2, 3 yards. Do you have the patience, and maybe the score dictates it, do you have the patience to stay with it? Because if you do, the chances are, and what we've seen all year long going back to week 3 down in New Orleans when he broke that in the 4th quarter, the chances are he's going to break a long run and he's either going to score or he's going to give you great field position like he did against the Saints. So I just think regardless of what Jaylen's condition is, they have to keep feeding him.
And that's a good point because the Eagles have really not had to play off schedule. They haven't been down 14 points. They haven't been down big where they just have to throw the ball. And Saquon's going to break one. So Saquon, is he good enough to basically be the explosive plays of a passing game? Because that's kind of what he is. 78-yard touchdown, 62-yard touchdown. You would love that in the passing game, but he's given that to you in the running game.
Well, I don't think they've exploited him enough in the passing game, John, to be honest with you. I mean, they take him out a lot of times, put Gainwell in, it's fine. Ken's a good player. He's got his role. But honestly, I feel like if you go back to his rookie year, when he's with the Giants against the Eagles and some of those games he had, and some of the big explosive plays he had as a rookie to get him 2,000 yards that year were in the screen game. And I feel like whether it's a spot screen, tunnel screen, slow screen, I feel like the more different ways you can get him the ball, I feel like it's something that Kellen Moore has yet to really do enough of, especially with as athletic the offensive line is and how they move and get out there in space. So it's something I would look for, but are they good enough to win with the explosive plays? Their explosive plays come out of the run game, which is different than most teams. But I wouldn't say that AJ, Devontae, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon can't make these explosive plays in passing. They certainly can.
And it's funny because the Eagles found their formula during the bye week, week 5. And I'm looking at these playoffs, Baldy. I see Josh Allen, pass for under 130 yards, Patrick Mahomes under 180, running the ball, playing great defense, not turning it over. I mean, have the Eagles kind of been on to something with the return of the running back this year?
No question, John. There's no question about it. Even, the Ravens got bounced out. They turned the ball over the other day. But, Buffalo, Josh Allen has 8 interceptions right now in, 19 games, 8 interceptions. I mean, he's not turning it over, and he's not making the throws that he once made. You just look at these turnovers and the relation to the preponderance of running the football. The Eagles ran it the league most, they ran it 630 times or something this year. They run it 57% of the time. I mean, you turn it over less when you don't throw it as much. You're seeing, changes in coordinators in Seattle, different places around the league, where get back to running the football and playing a more conservative brand, perhaps. But if you've got great running backs, feed those guys. Kyron Williams had a great day the other day. He's a hell of a back. They got the ball, they got 2 fumbles, which was the difference in the game, I think. But at the same time, I thought they defended the pass really well in that game for the most part. Slay and DeJean and Quignon. I mean, they made some good plays in the passing game. But I do think that we're seeing a shift. 8 of the best teams in the league ran the ball more than they threw it this year.
It's amazing. And when you look at the Eagles season, you being longtime studier of offensive linemen, played for the Birds, you do great jobs on your breakdowns. And I think offensive linemen love you because you point out all the things that they're doing that maybe doesn't get shown on the broadcast. So Saquon Barkley's season, I mean, he's 148 yards away from having the most ever in an entire season, including playoffs. You include the Eagles line. Is this kind of as good as it gets or the best season ever with linemen and running back that you have seen?
Yeah, this is good. I mean, I played with Eric Dickerson. I mean, what Dickerson did, in 1984 is before I played with him. But, his talent, I played with Dorsett. I played with Hall of Fame running backs. But I've never played with a running back that had these kind of runs like Saquon's having this year. And I talked to some coaches, I won't have to mention their name, but I talked to coaches about Saquon going for Eric Dickerson's record in week 18. And they didn't want to get into it. But I know Saquon wanted that. I know he wanted a chance at the record. Nobody's going to second guess the decision to sit the guys in week 18. But if he can get that, this week or in the Super Bowl, I mean, it's something, Lane Johnson wants to build a Hall of Fame resume. Saquon is trying to build a Hall of Fame resume. I mean, all these guys think about it now that they're in the business for a long time. But that's something you hang your hat on, something that anybody in that Hall of Fame committee stands up there in front of the room and go, oh, by the way, in 2024-25, Saquon set an NFL record. Eric Dickerson's records, it's over 40 years now, John. 40 years that record is stand. In what sport does any record, Wilt Chamberlain, but what record lasts 40 years in any business right now? In any sport, that record still stands. I mean, it gives you a glimpse of how difficult that is to do. And so, look, if Saquon can get that all-time yardage leader, I would celebrate that as a lineman.
And it's really amazing with your breakdowns. And then we saw Jalen Hurts change the play at the line of scrimmage, both of those explosive runs for touchdowns. And it's amazing because these linemen and Jalen, they know within like a second or a second and a half that it's going to the house.
Yeah.
How amazing is that? You have teams stacking the box. You have teams doing whatever they can, and the Eagles and Saquon still run it on them and through them.
I think you saw Lane Johnson on the 68-yard. I mean, it's like as soon as he got past Mackay, like he knew it was a house call. You see, the players feel it. They've seen enough of it this year to kind of know. It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. Mackay just destroyed the linebacker in that play on the 68-yarder, and on the 78-yarder. I mean, to see Cam Jurgens, to see Lane shut off the penetration. The guys know up front, if they do their work, they got a guy that can make it pay off, and like nobody else's business right now. It's a very good feeling, and so there's always a dance, John, that takes place, a choreograph between the line and a running back. And sometimes it's week to week. Sometimes it's something that happens during a game where you're like, how in the hell do we get to Bobby Wagner in this look? And you might, Stout and Lane and Cam and those, guys up front, they might talk about it. Like, let's fold this. Let's try this. We got to get Wagner blocked, or we got to get Louvu blocked. If we could do that, whether it's a mesh point or motion, and get those guys to move, they're always looking to tinkering with every run where you might get a house call on one of these calls.
It's very impressive to me, too. Guys that have seen Saquon from high school to college, now 7 years in the pros, getting stronger, getting better, and getting better as games goes on, getting better as seasons go on. Is it me, or maybe is he not being hit as much this year? We see some of the holes the offensive line is opening for Saquon, and he is not touched on some of these long touchdown runs.
Yeah. Well, he's never, I said it when the Eagles signed him somehow. When they got him, I'm like, he's never going to see runways like he's seeing right now. Like, he's gotten clear, like, the second touchdown at the end of the first quarter. I mean, he didn't see holes like that in New York. And so the other part is, he dealt with high ankle sprains. He dealt with injuries throughout his time in New York. I feel like he's been healthy for all 18 starts this year, or 19, whatever it is right now. I feel like he's been healthy for all these starts. He's not dealing with a high ankle sprain. He's not dealing with something. I mean, we saw him grab his wrist the other day. There's no question that, that wrist was injured. At that point, they wrapped it up on the sideline. But, for the most part, his legs have been healthy. And so the way that he takes care of himself, the way that, he hasn't, I don't know what it is now, 7 years, whatever it is, John, he hasn't slowed down. He's still running away from defenses. Now, a lot of guys who take big hits, like it's just a matter of time. We saw it from Ezekiel Elliott, lead the league in rushing, in premier, but, those hits really took its toll. I feel like Saquon doesn't take as many of those type of hits, even though he's a big volume carrier. And so I think the way that he protects himself, the way that he gets down and all those kind of things, I think it helps him, because I haven't seen, I've seen Eric Dickerson in his 7th year start to slow down after a hamstring pull. We haven't seen any pulls like that, knock on wood, to Saquon. So I feel like he's healthy, like all of his, the muscle and core strength of him is as strong as it's ever been right now.
What do you think about the whole question of the way they're playing? And maybe since that bye week, it's like, okay, we have the rushing attack, we have the defense. Jaylen, we don't need you to take chances. Play it safe. And you see maybe Jaylen holding onto the ball a little while, taking some sacks. Is that the way to play it right now? Or do you want Jaylen to take some chances? Is he doing it the right way right now?
Well, just think about, the game in Detroit on Saturday night. Jared Goff had a terrible game, right? But, his first interception, first of all, he got the ball stripped out of his hands, Dorrance Armstrong, whatever. But he takes a throw to Tim Patrick, he's sitting right in a hole, John. It's a zone, it's a throw. You got to layer the ball. You got to throw it over the underneath defender, but you can't sail it. And Jayden sailed it, to Quan Martin, and he picked it off. And it was a big play in the game. And and if you go back to Brazil, John, and you look at, the seam route, to Devontae Smith that was intercepted by Xavier McKinney. It's the right throw, it's the right read. McKinney made the play. Like right now, I don't feel like Jaylen's going to make those throws. The throw to the sideline to A.J. Brown is a safe throw. It's his back shoulder. AJ's getting it. Nobody's getting it. I feel like he's taken the 50-50 balls out. And he's good. He's a good deep ball thrower. We've seen him make number of throws over the years down the field. But I feel like he feels, and I haven't talked to him, John. You see him all the time, but I don't feel like he wants to put the team in jeopardy right now by making a throw that he doesn't necessarily have to make. And so hold it. There's stats out there for how long he holds, all that stuff. But you look at, the first playoff game in the throw to Jahan Dotson, he holds it for 7 seconds. Jahan uncovers. He's the open guy, in the end zone. He hits him. So there's a little bit that says to me, you got to be a little more aggressive than he's been, but not making a mistake where here's Marshon Lattimore, here's, Mike Sanristel with the interception he had against Goff in the end zone before the end of the half. Like, I don't feel like he's going to make those throws this week.
Yeah, and look, Lamar Jackson is home. Jared Goff is home. They had a lot of turnovers. Give me a matchup that you think could decide this game, because I see, you love the offensive lineman at Washington. That's a big loss with Sam Cosmi on their offensive line, and you're looking at Jalen Carter across from you on a backup guard. Is that one of those matchups that could define this game?
Be too good, John. That's right where I would go.
Really?
Like Brent Scott, he's been a backup tackle. He had to go with a guard the other day, so he's a swing guy. But, he's been cut, traded, all these things have been nobody can handle Jalen right now as it is in this business. But as a backup, as a backup player that hasn't played a lot, I know I saw him play week 5 or 6 against the Bears. He got in there, they had a bunch of injuries. He got in there, but he hasn't played a lot. And what you worry about backup players is if he gets beat early, what's his head going to be like? Because they don't really have a lot else you can go to. What's he going to be like if Jalen just abuses him on a play or 2 plays where he just, gets him going on skates and swims him and he gets, now, so that's a matchup I would watch all day long. But the safety valve there is really Jayden's ability to just avoid quick pressure. We saw it last week, Paschal came free. They broke the protection down. He's a free hitter coming right at Jayden Daniels. And his suddenness just to avoid guys like, Jalen is probably as good as anybody in this business. So that's the safety valve. Is Jayden he'll escape it more times than not if there is quick pressure. But, just crushing the pocket the way I think he will. I call it cage rushing, where you just literally put the guy in a cage and just walk him right back into the quarterback's lap. That type of rushing probably affects Jayden Daniels more than anything right now.
And I love the matchup last week with Sean McVay against old school Vic Fangio. And it's interesting, Baldy, because Vic hasn't had to blitz a lot this year, but the stats that I saw said he wasn't blitzing that much first 3 quarters, and then he turned it up fourth quarter. Now, sometimes Matthew Stafford beat him, and we saw the Lions blitz Jayden Daniels. And man, have you seen a rookie handle the blitz like that? No negative plays.
No, he destroyed the blitz, and they came after him every way possible, really. And so, Vic definitely dialed it up. Both linebackers came. He had a couple of 6-man rushes there late in the fourth quarter. He wanted to, just speed up Matt Stafford, and they got one ball was blocked, and they wanted to speed him up, and they did. And so, you got to pick your spots, and basically the huddle call, coming in to Zach Bond is, we're going. You guys got to hold up in the back end. You got to tighten it up. You can't let him get the ball out quick. You got to tighten your coverage up when that happens, and we're going to see if we can affect the quarterback. Jayden was unbelievable against the pressure, one after another. In fact, Brady said, I think at halftime, they got to change their approach, and he was right, but they didn't, and he still kept. He held the snap. Something to look at in this game. Like, how long does he hold the snap to kind of see where they're coming from? It's one of the weapons that a quarterback has. Eventually, the defense has to declare what they're doing. We know that Vic is basically going to be in a 2-high shell at every snap of the game, and then he's going to move at the snap and kind of reveal what coverage he's in. He's going to try to hold it as long as he can, and then Jayden's going to try to hold it as long as he can. So there's going to be a chess match between Jayden and Vic throughout this game, I believe.
One other matchup that I think could be a lot of fun is A.J. Brown against Marshon Lattimore, and we saw how many flags Marshon got trying to defend A.J. Brown. So what would you say Jalen Hurts needs to do better, or even Kellen Moore with his play calling with Jalen possibly having the knee issue? They want to get that ball out quicker, first read here. I mean, how can you get A.J. going? Because I think he'll be fired up for this matchup against Lattimore, right?
Yeah, and so, look, I mean, Lattimore, I'm a big Marshon fan and have been since he came in 2017, but he's not the same player right now that he once was. He's had an assortment of injuries, had the hamstring all year long for most of it. I see Mike Evans chew him up pretty good. But he wants that matchup. I mean, that's the Marshon. He wants to travel. It's interesting. They made a lot of changes in the secondary. San Rissel was their slot corner, but if you only play two receivers, you go two tight ends. San Rissel will play outside like he did last week against Detroit. But, look, I believe in A.J. Brown. I don't know how bad the knee is. It looks like he's favoring it a little bit right now. To me, it doesn't look quite as explosive coming out of his breaks, but he had a couple of drops the other day, which is unlike him. Now, the weather conditions could be a part of it. But I just think basic stop routes on the outside, basic comebacks, like is Lattimore going to be up in his grill? Is he going to play off man? How's he going to play it? Like, AJ's ability to come back to the ball, catch everything with his hands. One of the things that Jalen always loved about AJ is he catches the ball with his hands away from his body. And if Lattimore's on his upfield shoulder where he's supposed to be, like it's going to be tough to get AJ's hands down. He's going to catch that ball with his hands. The ball doesn't come into his body much. And so I feel like, man, I had no problem getting AJ the ball early in this game. Just no problem at all. Like I call some plays from him. He's a beast. We haven't seen the best of him recently, but I know how important he knows he is to this game and to winning this game.
Yeah, and Baldy, it did strike me, though, that last week or the week before, he did openly admit to us in the media that day where he said, I'm banged up, and that the knee has really been bothering him. So I wonder, could we be looking at some sort of surgery, little surgery or arthroscopic something after the season? Because for him to come out and say that, yeah, I'm banged up, it says a lot.
Well, it is. It does. I mean, most guys, Tom Brady played an entire year with a torn MCL, and he got it surgically prepared after the season, never said a word. It was never on the injury report. So it does say a lot because most players don't want any excuses made when things aren't going well. He ran a curl route on the inside last week early in the game. He was in perfect position to catch it, went through his hands. Unusual drop for him, but it was the right throw by Jalen to hit him. But yes, you just hope that it isn't affecting any part of his mental ability to play this game. He's still blocking as well as he's ever blocked. I might just do a breakdown at some point this week on just A.J. Brown's blocks and how important they are in some of the downfield runs that Saquon and Jalen have gotten. He's an excellent blocker. Even the touchdown by Dallas Goedert 2 weeks ago, they don't make that without A.J. making a great block. Like, I know he's committed, but look, any player that is less than 100%, and it's affecting him, it affects him. I mean, he needs his legs to separate and to explode. And if he can't do that right now, that's frustrating for him.
Yeah, I love the point you made because it's almost like the receivers are kind of like taking a back seat a little bit and saying, I'm going to do whatever I can to help Saquon Barkley because he is that good and that is how we win. Baldy, and I love the fact that we're seeing live Baldy breakdowns during games now. That's pretty cool. So what do you think is going to happen in this NFC Championship game, NFC East battle? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, you're going to spend hours and hours, John, talking about the quarterbacks, and that's fine. And they'll talk about the coaches and all that. The Eagles, I said from the very beginning of this thing that the Eagles will go 4-0 in the playoffs. Like I said it matter-of-factly because I thought they were so much better than anybody else in the trenches. And that's where these games get won and lost. And so I know people want Jalen to throw for more yards and all this stuff. And maybe he does, to your point. Maybe it becomes a shootout. And Jayden is just, he's from another planet right now. But I just feel like the Eagles are better than both teams, better than Washington here in the trenches. And I think that's going to show up. The development to watch Nolan Smith play football now versus the first month of the season when Bryce Huff was out there and he's barely playing, to see where he's at now, like that's great coaching. And so, Cooper DeJean, like all these guys have improved. The player development's important. Mekhi never played guard before in his life, was never asked to play guard. Do you see him play the way he's playing right now? Like, I enjoy watching player development. I just think they're better than the Commanders are in the trenches. I think that's going to separate these two teams.
And I tell you, Jordan Mailata said one of the big differences of last year to this year is the detail with the coaching and the connection with the players and the coaching. And you just said it. I mean, that's such a good point about the development. I mean, look at all the Georgia players and how much they've grown. And you talked about the young secondary. So that is pretty cool to see. It's almost like everybody has gotten better, which is
even a guy like Darius Slay. I think Slay's playing great. I think he's energized by a lot of these young guys. He's the old guy out there. But I was telling one of the young players a few weeks ago, I remember seeing Slay when he was still young in Detroit, and they were scrimmaging the Steelers. And Antonio Brown was in his heyday. He was the best receiver in football. And literally every single drill for 2 straight days in a row, Slay lined up in front of Antonio Brown. And he got his lunch handed to him a number of times. But it didn't just, he didn't despair. He knew that he was going to make him better. And I feel like Slay's he's an older player now, but he's still really good. Like his positioning, the interception 2 weeks ago, like how he's seeing the ball, how he's playing the ball in the end zone. I think he's getting a lot of energy from Quinion, from Cooper, from Reed. I think he's enjoying playing with a lot of these young guys. And while he's still on top of his game, because they used to say, and it is true, that the problem with experience is by the time you get enough of it, you're too old to enjoy it. But I feel like Slay can still enjoy it. He's still a really, really dynamic and really talented player.
I feel that way about relationships too, Baldy. It's like, so who's your Super Bowl matchup?
Well, it's hard to go against Patrick. It just is.
Yeah.
Andy, Patrick, Spags, Philly's finest right there. They're so good in big games. They constantly find ways. Last week, Dave Tobe, kickoff return, sets up their first score. Kelsey was invisible in the first game against the Bills. Like last week, he's the playmaker. And as much as I love Sean McDermott and Josh and what they're doing, like it's hard for me to go against Mahomes and Andy just because of their record in the postseason. So in New Orleans, I like seeing Philadelphia and Kansas City getting it together.
Oh, if that happens, the storylines with Andy and the Chiefs going for the first three-peat, wow.
Tell them not to paint the whole field like they did 2 years ago. Keep the paint off the field. Let the guys go play.
Good point. Good point. That's a great point. Hey, Baldy, we look forward to seeing your Baldy's breakdowns. Hey, I love it during the game now. We got live action and then NFL Network. You're great on there. And Compass next year again, right?
Yep. Compass, yeah, Odyssey, All City, we name it. We'll be busy next year, John, but we're going to finish this up strong here this year.
I love it. We'll keep working hard, man. You're everywhere. John. And see you at the Super Bowl, hopefully.
I'll see you out there, John. Just got to take care of business on Sunday.
Flagrant.